Hello, Dr. Carrie Hepburn here from the Compass PD podcast. I am the founder and the CEO of Compass PD, and I am incredibly blessed today to have my good friend Jackie Jones joining us. Welcome, Jackie. If you've been listening to the podcast lately,
Hi.
hello. If you've been listening to the podcast lately, you'll notice that we've been working to create opportunities that support the education system, not just individual situations, but education as a whole system. And one of the ways that we're doing this is by the Compass PD team talking with different stakeholders about what their needs are and what need to be on their radar at any given time of the year and predictable problems they will face throughout the school year. An additional layer that we've added is that we're bringing in guests who are outside of our organization. They've worked with us and having them come in and share their story with us. Like, what was the process like? What did we learn? What worked? What obstacles did we face? And today I'm really excited because Jackie's going to be that person that's sharing her story and the journey that we did over the last several years. Our hope today is that you gain some insight into the process of the work that we've done, that we're able to share some wisdom, maybe help you overcome some of the obstacles that we faced, and then also be sharing like those beautiful successes that we had. Our hope for you is that today you take the learning from today, you make it even better. You reach out to Jackie and I so that we can make it even better for others. And that is what helps us collectively as an organization in education become better. So, Jackie, I thought we would start out with taking them back to the beginning, like when we got started, what was the current reality, kind of all the things.
Ooh, okay. So back to the beginning. Our journey, I guess, started together roughly around 3 years ago. I was kind of just starting out my work within a district, and I was in the very early stages of learning that district's dynamics and needs. And
Mhm.
we just kind of, by destiny, were brought together.
It was a really interesting time because everyone was coming right out of COVID,
Yep.
being virtual learning, lots of emotion for everyone. I remember at that time there were a lot of big changes, and so it was tough. It was a tough like time. We were trying to get back in classrooms and sort of be normal at that time too.
That's exactly what it was. We were coming right off of COVID, but then also there were other changes that were happening within
Mm.
the district. When I think about it, the district is blessed with amazing educators, but
Mhm.
historically and previously in the district, they were more of a text-based. Um, they had a text-based philosophy for as far as their teaching philosophy went, and they were in this very pivotal time of transforming into a workshop model. And
Mhm.
along with embracing a workshop model, they had a new resource that was given to them as well. So there was other changes that were happening within the district.
There were, and this is something for those of you that are listening that's pretty predictable that happens. Typically, we aren't coming out of COVID and having dealt with all of that. But one of the things that we see a lot when district leaders want to make a change, they get a resource hoping to change that instruction versus maybe spending some time on the why and the what behind it. That's kind of what happened was we walked into that situation where it was like, ooh, lots of big changes happening all at one time.
And I think those changes too really were like the catalyst that led us to our journey together because
Mhm.
I know I talked about it, I just said it earlier, but call it fate, call it destiny, but or really good timing. But at that time, the director had really wanted to make sure that the new resource they had was taught with fidelity. And,
Mhm.
I being an outside perspective, well, really both of us being outside perspectives, we were kind of able to bring this lens um, that allowed us to collaborate with the educators to get the biggest impact into teaching and learning. And
Mhm.
I think that really is what set this journey together and really made it so successful.
I agree. So
Do you?
now everyone kind of has that backstory. They have a little bit of an idea of what it was like when Jackie and I kind of walked in. Jackie being their new, like one of their leaders in instruction, and then for me as a consultant coming in. So let's talk a little bit about what the work was like. What did we end up kind of doing? Can you talk through that?
Yeah. Gosh, when I first started to think about that, it it really makes me think the work we thought we were going to be doing versus how it kind of shifted towards the end. It took a little bit of twists and turns. I think about the old adage of like all roads lead to Rome. And
Mhm.
when we started, the idea that Rome was going to be this destination of clarity to the new resource that the district had adopted. And
Mm,
so, in coming in, kind of the roads we started to take originally were providing clarity to teachers and educators in the district and professional learning towards the resource and also professional learning towards the workshop model.
mm,
When we started this journey, this trip to Rome, um, it became abundantly clear very early on that there were very pivotal pieces missing
mm,
within details towards the standards.
mhm,
And it immediately allowed us to say, okay, wait a second, we have to take a step back and look at why. What was going on? And because the teachers are, they're amazing educators, like I said before, and they had
mhm,
done this previous work that we wanted to capitalize on. And that
mhm,
previous work was utilizing the standards to make I can statements, which I think that all across education, at least for the last, 10 years or so, I can take statements have kind of made its way into teaching, being your
mhm,
learning objective or kind of guiding your lessons.
mhm,
So we wanted to use that work of their I can statements to give professional learning into the resource and into the workshop model. But I can statements showed us that those pivotal pieces of standards were missing. And
mhm.
it almost created like this false sense of security.
Yeah.
And not only within the teachers, but also within in what we were comparing and creating. And so that false sense of security changed our trajectory. And we really started to look at what was missing within the standards and what details we needed to capitalize on so that we could really get to the meat of the standard and to know that we were teaching it to its fullest potential. I don't
Mhm.
know, what do you think about the idea of I can statements and false sense of security? Because to me that was such a big takeaway.
Well, I think what we saw is something that we see all the time in education. So it wasn't unique to a particular organization, which is something, it's like a predictable problem that we'll see a lot. That predictable problem is something that in leadership, myself having been in leadership, so I'm pointing the finger at me when I say this. Um, we would oftentimes ask teachers to unpack standards and write I can statements. And we did a couple of things. First of all, it's hard work. And we do a couple of things
Yes,
wrong.
it is.
It is incredibly hard. We don't have a protocol. And so we just say, just do it. And so everyone does it a little bit differently. We don't show the value of unpacking a standard and what we can do with it. And we don't give them the time to be able to do it. Not uncommon for us to think, well, I've already unpacked standards. I've already created these I can statements. And so I know my standards. And that was kind of, that's, I would argue, and I'm not saying this, I'm just saying this in general, is that a lot of times we don't because we haven't done the hard work.
I think that is so, so true. I mean, the people who are doing the work really are the people doing the learning. And
Mhm,
I think we right like when we started um giving that professional learning and having the edges, collaborate, it became clear that the I can statements lacked the ability to be a teaching tool, instead became this like tedious task of just something that was done and something that they had to do.
mhm,
And right away, you could see with informative data of just like looking at the teachers and seeing how they were acting that it was like a box to check instead
yes,
of like something that you could see and use for multiple different things. And that's really where, we realized that these I can statements, for as great as they sounded, we needed to start the journey. Instead of making clarity towards a resource, it
mhm,
was utilizing proficiency scales to build clarity towards the standards
mhm,
because those details weren't there. And as the teachers were looking into the resource and looking into and the lessons they've already had created and different things, those details were missing, so the standard wasn't getting taught to the fullest, or it was being taught to too much. And so we were spending a lot of time looking at ways in which um it was like trying to fit a round peg in a square hole. And
mhm.
so, because of that, proficiency scales became our new journey and our new why into our work.
Right. I love this, and I love this story because this is this is a story that you see a lot in organizations, and this is a successful story, so we'll be able to get to that in just a moment, but it's something that we see a lot in education
Yes.
is that it so I'm like, "Hold it, it's a success." In the What we'll do as leaders is we'll purchase a resource, demand that it's taught with fidelity, but we don't do the background work so that we can see, like, the background work being what do students need to know, understand, be able to do. So we need to figure that out. Go back to your Wiggins and McTighe and understanding by design courses and study their books. And that helps build like the why and the what that we're teaching. And then the proficiency scales provide the clarity, the way we're assessing so we can see what the expectation is. And then we can dig into now what resource do we need to be able to teach this? Because what you'll hear often is this doesn't align to the standards if you buy something. You get a lot of pushback. People are really upset about this change because they haven't done the background work to be able to make
Hmm.
that decision and have the stuff that they need to make sure that their students are mastering those standards. And sometimes we just don't know them to that level, so when we're teaching something it's like it doesn't align with the standards, but when you unpack the standards you're like, oh, maybe it does.
And that's really what I think makes this also a success story. Like you were saying, is it is, you start the work and you have to reevaluate your why. And then you try to go through the process. So when we reevaluated that, oh, okay, we need proficiency scales to get into those details and to kind of give that background work, then all of a sudden that tediousness just
Mhm,
floated away and it became intentional and
mhm,
meaningful. And those I can statements, something that they had to be posted or that gave this false sense of security that we were doing it to the level of the standard, now became something that educators knew exactly what details went into it. They knew exactly a vertical alignment and level of how it
mhm,
fit in within other grade levels, and it became the foundation
Mm,
for what we looked at when looking at resources and what resources we could potentially need to use to fill this particular area of our curriculum that is missing. And so we would use the proficiency scales as a rubric to be able to help do that. And it was very, very meaningful and beautiful because the proficiency scale itself was created by the teachers
mhm,
with the guidance of us. And
mhm,
so we really started creating proficiency scales utilizing a gradual release of responsibility. So showing educators, here's the completed example, and letting the teachers look at it, letting them use it and compare
mhm,
it to a resource so that they could see its meaning. And then all of a
mhm,
sudden it wasn't something they were doing, it was something they were using. So
mhm.
each and every time we worked together, then in the beginning, we had gifted a proficiency scale, but
Yeah,
by our second time working together, we were creating proficiency scales on other standards together. And teachers wanted to do this. They wanted to
yes.
see and utilize this into their curriculum. So no longer something that feels tedious, now it's something they want. And that
Mhm,
kind of unsolid foundation after coming out of COVID and switching into from text based lessons into workshop and things
mhm.
feeling a little uneasy, now all of a sudden these proficiency scales became our solid foundation. And so they
Yeah,
were wanting more and more and more. And the clarity, the joy was coming, with each and every creation of the proficiency scale.
yeah. I think there's a couple things I want to point out to those who are listening today. One, I'll start with this first. The first thing I want to point out is that Jackie and I met the summer of 2022, and her heart was heavy for her teachers. She wanted to serve them and serve them really well. And she wanted to spark joy and bring excitement back to the work that they were doing. Things had been so heavy
Mhm.
for so long. And she said she was very, very adamant that that be the center of everything that we were doing. What can we do that's going to spark joy? And how can we make
Mhm.
learning fun? Getting that background knowledge where we were able to sit down and just be completely transparent with teachers that this was, long time ago, we went from 0 to 100 without doing 25, 50, and 75 before we went there. We skipped some steps, and they were like, "Thank you. Like, now this is starting to make sense."
Yes.
Something that Jackie did was, let's gift them a couple of proficiency scales. And what that did, meaning we
Mhm.
walked in, Jackie and I sat down for days, days, and
Yeah,
unpacked
days.
and had like three proficiency scales. So know that this is not easy work. But something she did that was really nice
Nope.
was honor the work that the teachers had done when they were really working at their best level in between meetings during
Mhm.
the school day to unpack standards on their own. And so we took what they had, we completed unpacking the standard, and then and made sure that all of the standards and all the grades that she serves had the same. So the protocol was the same. And then we created the proficiency scale as a model. So then as we were studying it with the teachers, you could feel the relief, like, oh, I can use this. This makes sense to me. You could see
You
the, uh,
you really could. It was an emotion in the room. The feel was there,
yeah,
and you could see it come off of them of like you felt that confidence come back.
yes. And that's what I was like, there was an empowerment and excitement that was building each and every time we met.
Mhm.
Teachers, they were feeling supported. They were feeling like they had the tool that would be helpful for them. They had clarity. So, any
Mhm.
misconceptions, we were able to make that as a team crystal clear. And
Mhm.
when she said, I want this to be a gift, it really was a gift. And teachers were begging for more and more of her and for more of that knowledge.
Yes.
Now they're empowered and they don't
Yes.
need us. Like, it's beautiful.
Right. It's beautiful. And I think one of the most, the shining star out of all, after the journey had been created and we kind of had that independent release of the proficiency scales to the team, it was no longer we were no longer needed, and it felt very Mary Poppins like, that
Uh-huh.
we were creating, this work together, and by the end they were moving into other standards created together, look it over, like, see what you guys think. And
Yeah.
in itself, you saw the full circle of clarity, and you saw a solid foundation. And those proficiency scales turned from not only a tool to evaluate the resources and the lessons that they were creating, but then they became they're they're such a multi-tool that teachers now could use them for formative assessments and summative
Mhm.
assessments. And
Mhm.
then as education is kind of, we're moving through on how to teach to the best we can teach in the amount of time that we have, it's a though that tool becomes kind of, your shining star, if you will, because it's your checkpoint for everything. Oh, we need a summative assessment, let's use our proficiency scale to see which one to pick or create. Oh, we need to take formative data to ensure that our students are reaching to their full maximum ability and proficiency on this particular lesson, let's use
Mhm.
our proficiency scale. And
Yeah.
it then became not only a tool that they were using in a resource to identify things, but now a multi tool.
Right. When you can light a fire in educators, nothing can put it out. And when you can get
I
people
love that.
excited about learning, you ride that train and they are excited about learning and they're seeing the possibilities. There's nothing that can stop them. There's nothing that can stop them. And that's really exciting. So now they kind of get a little gist, a little bit of an idea of what it was like in the process. Let's talk about the end result. Like, what's been the impact since we've done this work?
That I think brings the largest smile to my face. And I know for those of you who are listening, you can't see my smile, but I'm smiling ear to ear when I really think about the end result. Because
Mhm.
for teaching and learning, and we've said this before in today's episode, but I also think that when we started this work, we were really we were coming out of COVID. There was a
Mhm.
transition in philosophies of teaching. There was a new
Mhm.
resource. And I think
Mhm.
everybody in education, especially coming out of COVID, that there was
Mhm.
an unsolid foundation. And when we started our work, we knew that that wasn't something new
Yeah.
going in. But the process itself started as a way just to gain clarity into the standards.
Mhm.
And the end result has been so much more, because
Mhm.
teachers are joyful and they find now that their objectives and their I can statements are meaningful and intentional. Student
Mhm.
learning has
increased, for every grade that we have worked with, we have seen an increase in grade level performance skills by
Mhm.
students across the board.
Mhm.
And like meshing that all together and saying, okay, we now have this immediate impact on student learning. This proficiency scale now became this multi tool that we can use to be able to lock guard our curriculum together. So no matter what resource comes our way, or what thing we're looking at possibly editing and enhancing within our curriculum, we have something that ties us together, just
Mhm.
gained so much power for the
Mhm.
teachers and created this unbelievably secure feeling in a time where, like I said, that, you know, w- we needed that. Education needed that. And
Mhm.
that has been the largest impact, I think, thus far, is not only are we seeing student performance, but we're seeing teachers um, feeling secure
Yeah.
and powerful and teaching to the standards and knowing that they are making the largest impact on every student that walks in their door.
And as you're talking, Jackie, something that you would see is I thought was really beautiful as they were coming to this clarity and feeling empowered, the reflection that they had and the vulnerability to be like, I think I've been doing this not quite to the level, or maybe I like this unit a lot or this novel a lot, and it might not be the best unit. And we all do that. And
Yeah.
just to be that vulnerable was incredible. It was truly a gift on our part to be able to witness that and have those kinds of conversations together alongside them. Like, ooh, maybe we could make a
So
couple changes.
So much so. And, you talked about being an administrator earlier. I was one of those educators. So I'm going to pull it back to me here a minute and thinking about when I was teaching in the classroom, there were certain lessons that I didn't want to let go because I just loved them,
Yeah.
and they were like my babies. And
Mhm.
so I didn't want to let them go. So having those reflective conversations, I can say for sure I would have been an educator who would have been like, no, I need to keep this, I need to keep this. But the teachers we were working with were having these unbelievable conversations,
Mhm.
and they maybe loved something. They were all in for saying, we need to edit, change, enhance, and
Mhm.
utilize that. It was so profound. And the camaraderie that came out of it, the team
Mhm.
unity that came out of it, and
Mhm.
the empathy for their team as educators, it was
Yeah.
it was so, 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 so powerful.
Team unity, that really sticks out to me. That is something that I hadn't even really thought about until you just stated that, but they really did come together as teams
Mhm.
and even then vertical teams as they
Yes.
studied each other's because each of the proficiency scales built upon each other. So they had to rely collectively on one another to fully understand what they were teaching. And that really sets your schools up for success.
Yes. And it, like, it's one of those situations where it's like, that in this moment, that nothing was just like by happenstance. It
Mm-mm,
was because those educators and teachers, they did the work, they did the
mhm,
learning. And it
mhm,
wasn't just by luck that it pulled them all together, because they are amazing teachers and amazing individuals.
mhm,
But the work itself was so meaningful and intentional that it pulled them together in this unified sense.
yep,
And I could see that being something that would be consistent year after year after year that they are utilizing these proficiency scales and pulling the teams together as new educators come
Mhm.
in and other
Mhm.
ones retire. I know that these proficiency scales will continue to be the lock guard of the curriculum.
Wonderful. As we start to wrap up, I would love to hear like what lessons we learned, what might we change? What would you say to people who are, or even like, what would you say to people who are considering starting this work?
Oh my goodness. I would say do it now. Like start the work immediately.
Mhm.
It is I wouldn't hesitate to any district and any educators that's thinking about it. I would say do it now. It is, it not only does, for districts who want to increase their academic rigor, or for districts that want to empower their teachers, this is
Mhm.
something that works hand in hand together to do both of those things.
Yeah.
I think that hindsight's 2020. I think that for me, one of the largest lessons that I took away from this and I learned is that it is so powerful for things to be meaningful and intentional. And
Mhm.
that as, you know, as things in education are presented, whether it be from a district level, a state level, a federal level, whatever it may be, knowing the why behind that is
Mhm.
key. And that in itself, showing a purpose, then allows that work to, you know, you have a why. And
Mhm.
that to me was one of the largest lessons that I took away from it, was knowing
Mhm.
the why before the work is started, because that
Mhm.
builds like a sense of like a task, and it builds a sense of empathy for everyone being pulled together to be able to work on this task. And in it,
Mhm.
we have such meaningful and intentional learning that comes out of that, that we gain that academic rigor, and we gain the empowerment of educators, which is what is was and is so successful about this work.
Mhm. I would love just to add on something that I want to point out, that the why is like my jam. I totally love talking about the why. Like, why are we doing this? We need to know the purpose of this. Something else that was really uh, another lesson, that it's something we did. And if you're trying this journey on your own, I want to tell you this. I think this is important. We did the work. Jackie and I sat down and did the work first, that showed that we were in the trenches, and B,
Yeah.
that allowed us to see those predictable problems that they were going to face, and we could make a plan, a protocol to set them up for success. And I think that's key.
Oh, I love that you said that, because in that work, the work that you do, myself, I felt vulnerable in the work.
Mhm.
And so I recognized those emotions. So knowing that that could be a potential or predictable problem that would come out of work with teams, I was ready for vulnerability if it presented itself, and how
Mhm.
to build that confidence and competence in an educator that might have been feeling vulnerable, like I did when I first started. Because I think
Mhm.
as educators, we want to know, what's the perfect right answer? Am I doing this
Yes.
perfectly? And you had to go through it to know that that end result that comes out is perfect. It's
Yes.
perfect because the knowledge is in within the people, and the knowledge is in within the person and educator themselves, instead of some power in a program or power in one single thing. It's in the educator themselves.
Oh my gosh, that's like a mic drop right there. That is the I that is the perfect way to end our podcast today, Jackie. Thank you so much for that wisdom and for that inspiration. I want to say thank you for joining me today and talking about our journey together. This
Oh, you are so welcome.
this experience is going to be so helpful for someone who's thinking about getting started. Just do it. Like she said, it is a game changer. Thank you
It
so
really
much, everyone, for listening. Oh, you go.
Oh, it really is. It really is a game changer, and you are absolutely so welcome.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody. We would love your help. We have set an ambitious goal of impacting the learning of 1 million students in the 2023-2024 school year. Share this podcast with a fellow educator and reach out to us so that we can talk with you about how we can best support you and your school district in meeting those ambitious goals and providing professional development that meets those learning needs. Have a great day.